To understand the ISLM model, it is necessary to get acquainted with the concept of equilibrium in the goods and the money market. The two main economic agents that acts in the market are firm and the household. At an individual level, the firm and the household perform various roles in the economy. A firm is a producer, but to produce, they have to employ the four factors of production. So they also act as an employer. But to employ and pay to these factors, they need to invest money in the business. So they also act as investors. Household, on the other hand, are consumers. But to consume, they have to pay for the goods and services, and hence they have to sell their factors. So they are factor sellers, earning income in the form of rent, wage, interest and profit. After earning income, some part of income is consumed and the remaining part is saved by the household, and so they also act as savers. All these roles are performed by firm and household in two markets, that is goods market and money market. In the goods market, household and firm make aggregate demand for consumption goods and investment goods respectively, and the same are supplied in the goods market. To smoothen the activity in the goods market, they also enter in the money market, creating demand for money with the given supply of money. Let us now understand the goods market variable aggregate demand and aggregate supply in detail to understand the goods market equilibrium. Let us assume that we have a simple economy with two sectors, that is household and firm. So, the aggregate demand made by these two agents include C plus I, where C refers to demand for consumption goods and I refers to demand for investment goods. However, when we add third sector in this economy, that is government sector, aggregate demand is added with one more component, that is G, which refers to demand for government goods. Let us take a pause here and understand aggregate demand, which is equal to C plus I plus G. Let us take our own example. After earning income, we all spend some part of our income on our private consumption, and some remaining part we save, which is then converted by producers into investment goods. But we also need some public goods like safe drinking water, good roads, security, and therefore we pay a part of our income as a tax to the government and thereby demand government goods. And so this is how aggregate demand is a demand for C plus I plus G. The entry of government in the economy generally leads to better allocation of resources and thereby rise in the national income and output. And this may tempt the economy to open its gate for foreign trade. So, when this fourth sector is added to the three-sector economy, aggregate demand is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, where X minus M refers to exports demand minus imports demand. It is also called as net exports. Now let us understand the concept of aggregate supply. According to Keynesian economics, aggregate supply in the economy depends on the resources available and it is given. Let us learn it diagrammatically. We have level of income measured on the x-axis. Important point to be noted here is that level of income also represents level of employment in the economy. That is, with the generation of employment of factors to produce the goods, there will be automatically increase in the income. And so, we can use level of income as synonym to level of employment. On the y-axis, we measure aggregate supply. With zero employment of factors, obviously there will be zero production and hence zero aggregate supply. Then, as we increase employment to N1, there will be rise in the aggregate supply. As we employ more and more factors, there will be increase in the production and therefore aggregate supply. Thus, there is a positive relation between level of income and the aggregate supply. However, will this continue forever? As we know that every economy has got limited resources. Suppose, as shown in the diagram, N6 are the maximum possible available resources in this economy. So, what will happen to the aggregate supply curve after the attainment of full employment of all N6 factors in the economy? How does the aggregate supply curve slopes after the full employment? Simple. After the full employment, if producer want to produce more, with the scarce resources, they have to pay more to the factors, leading to the rise in the cost of production and therefore rise in the prices of goods and supply. Thus, this will only increase money value of aggregate supply and not the real increase in the aggregate supply of goods and services. And therefore, aggregate supply curve will become a vertical line parallel to y-axis after the full employment of resources. Now, let us learn about aggregate demand curve. We measure the level of income on x-axis and aggregate demand on y-axis. Can you guess what will be the aggregate demand at zero level of income? I am sure you must have guessed it correctly. Even with the zero income, aggregate demand cannot be zero, as to survive we need to consume and therefore demand. We either borrow or use our past savings to spend. Thus, at zero level of income, aggregate demand is positive due to autonomous consumption spent on basic necessities of life. However, as income increases, people would wish to live a better life and therefore aggregate demand will rise with every rise in the income. Thus, we have a positively sloping aggregate demand curve showing a positive relationship between level of income and the aggregate demand. Important point, however, to be noted here is that the slope of the aggregate demand curve is less than 1. That is, as income rises, we do not spend 100% of our rising income on consumption as we save some portion. And therefore, the slope of the aggregate demand curve is rising but gentle and not steep. Now, we got our aggregate demand curve and aggregate supply curve. So now, let's learn the goods market equilibrium with the help of aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve. We will just bring together the aggregate supply line and the two sector simple economy aggregate demand curve, and thus we get equilibrium at point E1 where aggregate demand intersects aggregate supply, and we get equilibrium level of income, that is Y1. Thus at point E1, AD is equal to AS. Now suppose that an economy wants to increase income to Y2. Given the aggregate demand AD1, private sector producer will have no incentive to increase production and therefore there will be no rise in the income to Y2. A country needs an autonomous investment, that is investment which is not dependent on profit. And such autonomous investment is done only by the government, who aims at maximization of welfare of the society. In order to increase employment and thereby income of the country to Y2, government will undertake public projects. With the entry of government as a producer in the economy at the level of income Y1, there will be a shift in the aggregate demand curve from AD1 to AD2, which includes C plus I plus G. So we got new equilibrium point E2, where the new level of income is attained at Y2. Now, with the infrastructural development brought by the government on the one hand, there will be rise in the productive capacity of the domestic firms, so surplus will be produced which can be exported. And on the other hand, rise in the income of the household will increase their demand for imported goods. And this creates pressure on the economy to open its gate for foreign trade. With the entry of the fourth sector in the economy, the aggregate demand increases further to AD3 from AD2. Now, we get a new point of equilibrium in the fourth sector, open economy, that is E3, where aggregate supply is equal to aggregate demand AD3 and we enjoy the national income increase to Y3. Now, after understanding the goods market equilibrium in 2-sector, 3-sector and 4-sector economy, let us proceed to learn money market equilibrium. This concept of money market equilibrium was developed by Professor J. M. Keynes in the form of liquidity preference theory. This theory he developed in his book General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. The term liquidity here refers to cash and preference refers to demand. So, according to Keynes, people demand cash for 3 reasons. They are: first, transaction demand for money. Actually, we all need cash to spend for our daily consumption, and therefore we demand cash for transaction. Higher the income we have, more we wish to spend on the goods, and therefore more transaction demand for money. Another demand for money is out of precaution, so it is called as a precautionary demand for money. As human life is full of uncertainties, we need to take precaution against such unforeseen by holding some cash for emergency like accident, sickness. Even this demand for money depends on the level of income. Richer the person, more the cash he prefers to carry as a precaution to meet the contingencies. The third demand for money is speculative demand for money. There are some people who are speculators and wants to make money by speculation. They are also holding cash to make speculative trading in the asset market. Since these people are highly money-minded and calculative, their demand for cash depends negatively on the rate of interest. That is, with higher interest rate in the bank, they will prefer to keep money in the bank and earn interest income rather than involving in the speculative risky trading. So, according to Keynes, liquidity preference, that is demand for money, a function of level of income and the rate of interest. Let us now learn the money demand and money supply diagrammatically. On the x-axis, we have money demand, and on the y-axis, we measure the rate of interest. Rise in the rate of interest brings fall in the demand for cash, as people prefer to hold cash in the bank to earn interest income, and so we have negatively sloping money demand curve. On the right side of the quadrant, we are measuring money supply on the x-axis and the rate of interest on the y-axis. According to Keynes, money supply is a policy variable and fixed by monetary authority and is not dependent on the rate of interest, and therefore we get a vertical line parallel to y-axis showing the constancy of the money supply. Now let's bring together money demand and money supply curve. The point E star is the equilibrium point where money demand intersects money supply, and thus we get equilibrium rate of interest R star, at which money demand is equal to money supply, that is, we have money market equilibrium.